Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film podcast. Today I have the awesome Graham Moore in because Graham has actually decided he's going to stand, and I think this is incredible because who better? A man who knows his stuff and about the Constitution, which is stuff which seems to have gone by the wayside for everyone else who's in the dirty game. So yeah, let's talk about this, and we're going to discuss all manner of things. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me on. I mean, quite a few of my supporters also watch your channel, so it's a positive thing. And hopefully, if there's anyone in Runcorn and Helsby watching this, vote for us on the 1st of May. It's going to be really important.
Yeah, brilliant. So you heard that, Runcorn and Helsby. If there's anyone there, get out and vote, because this is how you're going to create change, and we need change. And it's good to see podcasters coming together to help do that. And a shout out to my good mate Robbie, who is constantly telling me that podcasters need to come together, YouTubers, influencers, whatever you want to call yourselves, need to come together and start singing from the same hymn sheet. And that's how you're going to create change, instead of everyone. Yeah, so great stuff. I'm glad to hear that. So what made you want to do this then? What was the thing that finally made you know what? I'm going to do this.
So there's a number of things. First of all, we've got support all over the country. But to finish what you've just said about podcasters, or what I describe as alternative media, right? Mm-hmm. To be alternative media, you must live up to the name. You must talk about alternative subjects and have the alternatives to the mainstream media on these platforms. That's why we built it. I was one of the engineers that helped build the internet, right? So I want people to actually have an alternative. So there's a number of major things going on in the background. The first thing I'll say to you is we believe, as a political party and as an educational society, the English Constitution Party, the English Constitution Society, where we teach the Constitution. Yes, we do have a Constitution. We have a written Constitution. I can pull that book out and I will show it to you so people understand. We have a written Constitution. And those who say we don't have a Constitution, I'll say to them, so why do we live in a constitutional monarchy? It's obvious we have a constitution.
Didn't the America kind of get their idea from us?
So the American Constitution is almost, and the way that they are configured in America, with some tweaks, is a mirror of England in the 1600s. And people don't realise how closely related America and England are, not the British, by the way. And people also need to understand the major thing that we believe in is the number one human right. It's called self-determination. And that means everyone of England, right, should be in charge of their own destiny, not a political union. It failed for the USSR, and they created Soviet, right? Joseph Stalin created that as a commissar of the Soviet Union. Well, the same thing happened with Britain, which is an island that contains two nations and a principality and another, in my opinion, country called Cornwall, right?
Yeah.
These people of these constituent nations, including Northern Ireland, right? Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have all been, the people have been asked, do you want to be independent? The only nation that's never been asked is England. We've never been asked. And the reason why is because they know what the answer is going to be, right? And the answer is going to be, we want independence. What does it mean? It means you go back to the Commonwealth. You're still a brotherhood of nations, but you are in charge of your own destiny. People, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, won't have a say in what goes on in England, right? But they will have control of their own nations, and we have control of our own nation. It goes back to the Commonwealth, right? So once people understand that, and it's simple, it's really simple, and it's a reset. We're unique in the world to have a reset. But getting back,
So it's basically trying to strive for what Brexit was initially set out to do, which was take back your sovereignty, take back your own laws, and not be governed by external.
exactly that.
Yeah,
And the problem is
which didn't
that
happen.
the Remainers. So this is the thing that makes me well, not make me laugh. Sometimes it
Infuriates.
yeah, because the people that want to keep the British Union and everything that's happening now is the British that have done it. It's the British Parliament that have done it. Right? That Parliament isn't English, it's British. Right? People must understand that the Remainers for the EU and the British Union, which are people who said, well, we want to be out of the European Union, they're now using the same arguments as the Remainers for the EU. And one of the things they say, this is the strange thing, they come out with this line, right? It's a slogan, and they say stronger together. And then I say to them, you do understand that stronger together is a Marxist slogan from the Soviet Union, don't you? You're actually repeating a Soviet slogan and you call yourself right wing. And they're like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. Right. And then when you go and have a look at all these things, so when you get back to the Runcorn situation, I mean, do you want me to share a screen?
Mate, you can do whatever you want to do.
I just want to show people, and don't forget, I'm a leader of a political party. There's nothing special about me. I just understand the English Constitution and love my country, and I love the counties and shires of England and what's known as distributed governance. In other words, we the people, and you give the power back to the people. That means shires, counties, district councils, boroughs and parishes, right? So you go back to the people controlling their own destiny again, and that's
so. With that in mind, then, can I just quickly ask you what you think of devolution?
Do you want it in one word or two words?
Utter bollocks. Bollocks.
Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Okay. So if I explain to you devolution, so look at Scotland. Scotland's completely lost now, by the way. That's what people don't understand. They've removed the 7 constabularies, which was a form of distributed governance. It was a safety mechanism where one constabulary could come in and investigate another constabulary, even in Scotland. They had 7 constabularies. They've removed the constabularies. And now they've got Police Service Scotland, right? In other words, they've got a police state. And Scotland is a region of the European Union, no different, just think about this, as the region, the London Assembly. So you've got Sadiq Khan that runs that police, the Metropolitan Police, exactly, and all of them people are controlled by Sadiq Khan. That's a region of the EU. And what they've done is they've created regions of England to destroy England. They did it in America as well, by the way. President Trump has taken down the North American Free Trade Agreement. And what he's done is removed the mirror of the British system by taking away, because the North American Free Trade Agreement was a mirror of the British Union. He removed that, and they also put in FEMA regions in America, 10 regions. And what they do is they pull in 5 of the states, destroy the states, and have an administrative authority that destroys them states. That's what they've done with England. The blueprint to destroy America come from the British. So once people understand that the assemblies are administrative regions of the European Union, right? And the key thing for them is to destroy, very important for people to understand this, the English common law constitution. Karl Marx hated it. He hated England, right? So that's the biggest thing is assemblies, devolved power. We already had an almost perfect system in England, right? And that system is of shires and counties, districts and parishes. And then you add the boroughs and the burghs, etc. That's all we got to go back to. It's really simple to do it, and the people would be back in control again. So
Oh, I'm 100% behind that. We've been talking about that here in Thetford, because Thetford used to have its own borough, but then it all came under Breckland Council, and yeah, bad decision that was. But again, it was by design.
So what? It's all by design, and people. So people of Thetford, for example, people in Norfolk, Suffolk. Oh, let me just say that. I think I said it before on your show. Let's say Norfolk, right? If you controlled Norfolk as a shire, right, and you're in control of that, the way England used to work was you can set whether there's an income tax or not, or whether there's council tax or whatever. You can set that, and you can say there's no taxes in Norfolk whatsoever. What we're going to do is operate this system. And as long as businesses understand that you're on the level, it's all signed up, done, it's been voted on, that's part of your laws, right? If there was problems in Kent, the people in Kent, right, could move to Norfolk. And then all of a sudden, Norfolk, everything starts going up in Norfolk, the property prices go up, everyone's happy in Norfolk because the people are running it. You haven't got these idiots with economic degrees that couldn't fix their own bank accounts, right? Let alone the problems of a country. And that's what we got to get away from. We got to put business people back in charge of this country. That's how it used to be, by the way, prior to 1911 and the Parliament Act. So people just don't realise how much better the old ways were better for a reason. I forget England has been a whole country, for 1,100 years. Yet you're not even allowed to speak about England. If you mention the word England, you are deemed a racist. If you wave the English flag, you are deemed a racist. If you was to wave the Norfolk flag, you are deemed a racist because it's the direct connection to England, right? And they don't want to see that. What we're saying is,
don't forget right wing.
Well, again, and they don't even know the difference between right wing and left wing. How many people out there believe that Hitler, right, is right wing? He was an effing socialist. That's what it meant. The Nazi party were socialists. They was on the left. So Englishmen, we're not communists, we're not fascist, we're English, and we have a different governance system. It's called the English common law. And both the fascists and the communists need to remove the English common law for them to proceed. That's what it's about, really. Sometimes it gets frustrating because people out there have been brainwashed. Like, go back to the alternative media thing. If you're not going to be alternative to the BBC and what they're saying, surely you would say, so all I say to people, there's a box, it's called a British box, right? You have been programmed to only think inside that British box. There's a whole big world outside of that British box that people have been programmed to think British. Why don't you think about England? Take out the British system and the world will say, wow, England's back, right? That's even President Trump said that.
It's only really times of football where England becomes a thing, isn't it? But even that seems to get squashed.
Well, again, someone said to me the other day, and I found this quite funny. Someone who follows football, I don't really follow football. I prefer rugby, if I'm honest.
Shout out to Bob Says.
Well, the major thing with rugby is they're not pansies, right? They're like proper geezers going at it, and they are gentlemen. If the ref says stop, they stop, walk away. Do you know what I mean? And they're like big blokes who's like, one punch, you're out for 10 minutes, you know?
Well, this is exactly the same with like hard, the proper hard bastards that you come across in life are really nice people because they don't have to act like hard bastards because they know that if they want to, they can floor you. So they don't need that pretense. They don't need that.
Exactly, and they are extremely well disciplined. Whereas if you look at footballers, right, you think you're running around and you touch them like they're rolling about on the floor, and then they get the Oscar of the other side if they've done well enough, right, for that little touch, right, he's put bit of his hair out of place. All of a sudden, the other fella gets a red card, and you're like looking at him thinking, what is going on here, And they're paid millions of pounds to do it. It's just a joke.
It is Emperor's Games.
It is funny, but I just wanted it may be better if I try and share this with you, right? So I'm going to whack it up on the screen, and I hope it's going to come up, right? So, and then I'll just show, and I'll click through. So hopefully it should be on your screen. This is Mike Hansbury, right? To stand down as MP over assault conviction. So just let everyone know, he looks all lovely. There's a video here. There's a video online of what he actually did, right? So he's punched to the ground a constituent in one of his constituents, right? Not only when he was on the ground, this is more serious, by the way, even in law, in every law court in the land, right? If someone's on the floor and they're out or struggling or whatever, and you carry on, that's far more serious, right? He carried on. The bloke's on the ground and he's on top of him, punching him, right? So he gets convicted. He gets 10 weeks in prison. In 2 days, he gets an appeal and released from prison, right? He's still an MP, right? And then because of public pressure, he resigned. And that's how it's come about that the Runcorn election is there. So do you want someone that's actually going to stand for the people? One thing I can promise is I will 100% stand for the rights of the people of Runcorn and Helsby, and there would be a team of us. So it's not just me you get the team, right? And that team will ensure that we are the best you've ever seen represent you, because we must make a difference for that constituency, for the rest of the people in the country to understand who and what we are. But just imagine what this MP did, right? So now what I'm going to do is show you something else. Now, this is talking about two-tier justice. This guy on the screen now, police officers deny assaulting care home amputee. Now, I'm going to tell the audience who this guy is. He's 93 years old. He's in a care home. He's got dementia. He's got diabetes. He's had one leg amputated. He's in a wheelchair, right? And the police have been called because he is agitated. The police have been called to the care home. They tasered him, they gassed him, and they battered him, right? Battened him, right? Then handcuffed him. They then had to take him to hospital. He never come out of hospital. He was in there 3 weeks and died. And the coroner said it was nothing. He didn't die from his injuries from the arrest. Bullshit.
Bollocks.
Right? So what happened to these two coppers? Right? People they come up in arms and said, we need to do something about this, right? We've been on this case from day one, right? A 93-year-old man with dementia, in a wheelchair, with one leg and diabetes. They gassed him, they tasered him. Anyone ever been tasered? Let me tell you something, it's nasty and it hurts.
It's an electric shock, isn't it?
Massive electric shock, and it hits all your organs, right? So if you've got diabetes and you're tasered, it's a big issue, right? Cut a long story short, so don't forget you're talking about a 93-year-old man in a wheelchair with one leg, right? Contained, within a care home. He's not out on the streets or anything, right? Donald Burgess, right? He died 22 days later in hospital. This woman is a police officer, is 34 years old. She's the one who pulled the trigger and tasered him, right? This geezer is 49 or 50 at the time, right? Experienced police officer. He battered him with a baton, right? A 93-year-old man with one leg in a wheelchair, right? Battered him. and then gassed him. And this guy dies, right? They've been out on bail, and all they have charged them with, listen to this, is ABH, actual bodily harm. It's one above common assault, right?
How can they get away with that? At what point could they justify that amount of force on somebody who's not only really old, but physically disabled?
I totally agree. And again, what I'm trying to show people is how corrupt this system is, right? This two-tier system is so corrupt. I'm going to give you one other one, an instance. Anyone remember Ernest? I'll carry on with this first because it's important, right? Remind me about Ernest Saunders. So there's this investigation, and they've said, yeah, it was excessive force or whatever, and so it's gone to court, right? When we went to the court to go and have a look, listen to this, people. They wouldn't put their names on the board or their hearing on the board of the court. We went and spoke to the clerk of the courts and said, where is these people? And they would not tell us as citizen journalists. They would not tell us. Both again, justice has to be seen to be done. That's why there's a public gallery, right? They wouldn't tell us where he was. We had to hunt round, and eventually we found where their court case was, but no one would tell us. They didn't put it on the boards. They tried to hide it. They was making applications that it could be held in secret, right? That's how bad this is. And then
sounds like family courts.
Well, again, they've done everything to protect these two police officers and nothing to protect people in the future from police officers like this. But people need to understand that there is a law that covers this, and it ain't ABH, right? It is Criminal Justice Act, 1988, Section 134, torture, and it covers state officials doing exactly what they've done to a 93-year-old man. And they know that if they had been charged with that, they'll get guilty all day long from the jury. It's a mandatory, under Section 6, it is a mandatory life sentence. Right, and that's what these two should get: a mandatory life sentence.
Just go back down on their faces so we can make them a little bit more famous. He looks like he's straight out of Minder, doesn't he?
Well, again, they're worse than fuck. Listen, I know from my past professional criminals that have got more morals than most of these police officers.
Oh yeah, God, yeah, they.
And more morals than almost every politician and lobbyist associated with that parliament, right? So, and again, this is the other one. So it's the 19th of May in Southwark Crown Court. And I'm saying to people, we need as many people to go there, behave yourself, sit in the public gallery, but show that judge there is public interest in this case. We are not forgetting what they did to Donald Burgess, right? And it should have been charged. This law has been there since 1988 and no one's used it. The only people who used it have been us, with a private prosecution for what they did to Charles Staples. So just to make sure everyone understands that. And then what I'm going to do is now understand one other thing. So I'll keep that on there so people can see these people. Don't forget, 93-year-old in a wheelchair. Now, the next thing that you have to understand, does everyone remember the case of it's an old case, Ernest Saunders, and it was the Guinness affair, and he got 5 years for a major fraud against, and all these shenanigans in the background.
I'm not sure that I'm familiar with that.
It was called the Guinness affair. It was back in the 90s, I believe it was. Millions and millions to do with shares and some secret dealings and all sorts of money and market manipulation, etc. And he got 5 years, and Gerard Ronson and other people. The point I'm trying to make to people is Ernest Saunders was well known in the city, and he got 5 years imprisonment, right? After 6 months, he made an application for mercy and said that he had dementia, right? And a doctor had certified that he had dementia. They released him from prison and quashed his sentence and give him a pardon, right? 6 months after that release, he was back on a board and miraculously recovered from dementia. All right? So if you want to see a two-tier justice system out there, Because trust me, if me and you went the wrong way on a parking ticket, we'd be behind a door, right? These police officers that I've showed people, what happened to that member of parliament who battered a constituent, right, and got released after 2 days? Now look at this one. Hopefully it'll come up without it going boss-eyed on me. There you go. Let's have a look and see if we can find her. This lady, everyone see it on the screen?
Yep.
She made a tweet. She was angry that 3 children had been murdered, right? Been murdered. The system was covering it up. There was so-called riots, people coming out in disgust, people who have got children, and these children were stabbed, and then 3 of them were murdered in the most brutal way, the most terrifying way you can think of, right? Which I'm not going to say on this show. But when I say brutal, I mean brutal, right? This lady showed her disgust. She thought about it an hour or 2 later, and she deleted the tweet. She gets 31 months imprisonment. She's got her own kids, her own husband, right? And she's still in prison today now, right? Now, I've shown everyone from the MP to the police battering a 93-year-old man that should have got dumped the torture, right? People need to understand what's going on with the white working class girls in this country. There is state collusion with allowing it to continue. That comes under the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture. There are 3 principles, and any one of them can be true, and that's what you would charge them with. Whether you have omitted anything from a report, right? Whether you have consented in any way, whether you have acquiesced, right? Very important word. It means you've allowed it to carry on, even if it's begrudgingly, you've done it. Or you've acted in a way. Some of these police officers were actually, and their social services, police officers, Crown Prosecution Service, have allowed this to continue. Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister of the UK, who just happens to be Scottish, right? He actually stated to the police that these young girls should not be investigated. The crime should not be investigated against them as they are child prostitutes. Let me just make 2 points here. And the second, he says it's a lifestyle choice, right? Just like he called Gillian, whatever her name was, a bigot for talking about immigration. Gordon Brown was the one of the people that said, don't investigate this. That means he can be prosecuted under the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture. It was put in place for exactly this type of crime scenario, right? Section 6 carries a life sentence. There is no discretion. It's mandatory.
So why aren't people using it?
Because it's been hidden from them. We're the only ones telling people, and that's why I'm saying to people that if you want to see me in this place, that's what you've got to do, right? You've got to vote for me in Runcorn and Helsby. All these people are playing games. The only one I've seen, let me take that off the screen now. The only person I've ever seen that's even close to being an Englishman is Rupert Lowe. He considers himself to be British. I just think he's confused, to be honest with you. If he sat down with me for half an hour, he would come away and say, I'll tell you what, I'm English, right? And then he would get it. And then he would understand we are unique in England to have a reset position the same as what Russia had, and the USSR, when it was dissolved in 1991, it went back to being a Commonwealth. You can go and look it up. There was issues, and the reason why there was issues was because there was organised crime in Russia, and it come from the Soviet system. What we've got to do is get good, honest people back in our system, right? And we can do that.
Do you think maybe he says British because he's got to try and get the votes from people in Wales and Scotland as well as England, maybe, I don't know.
Well, the thing is,
But no, he could still identify as being English.
the thing is, so one thing that people, I'll tell you what, you sort of bring up something that's really crucial here, right? When you vote for your local candidate, and if you don't vote, by the way, if you do not vote, you are complicit in the system that has created it, right? And there was a great. Let me just see if I can find this. There was someone sent me a quote, and I thought, saying never a truer word said. Let me see if I can find it. One of the penalties of refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Plato. That's exactly right. Right. So these people that say don't vote, if you've got no one to vote for, vote anyway, because the constitutional law, you just write, I do not consent. Ashby versus White, 1703. It was a constitutional case about voting. It was also about separation of powers, right? And it confirmed everything. Queen Anne even come out on our side, right, and shut down Parliament because she said, you've got the audacity to debate the rights of an Englishman. That's not what you're in there for, right? So she shut down Parliament. So just to make sure everyone is understanding, when you elect your member of Parliament, there is one reason you are doing it, and it is not to elect a government, right? The system they're currently using isn't all. It only really changed 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, right? People don't realise that in the old days, if you was a member of Parliament, let's say that it turns out that you know a lot about health, for example. And you was I don't know, a matron or whatever in an hospital, went right through the hospital system. In the old days, if you was made the head of the National Health Service and you was a Minister for Health, you resigned as an MP because you become a crown you become a crown minister. So you couldn't operate for both. And what they've done is corrupted that system. You're not allowed to have 160 ministers that they've got in Parliament at the moment. People don't even realise it's actually unconstitutional and illegal, right? The free line whip that they have, right, is illegal under the Constitution, under the Bill of Rights. And the reason why they say 1 line, 2 line, 3 line means we kick you out of the party, right? The reason why it's a 1 line, 2 line, 3 line whip is because it is a coded system. Why is it a coded system? Because it's unlawful, right? That's why they did it like that. And it makes a mockery of the Constitution, because the Bill of Rights says no one can have authority over you in representing and airing the grievances of your constituents in Parliament. Not a political party, not the Crown, not a policeman, not anyone. No one, not even the courts. That's why you can't get sued for what you say in Parliament. Parliament's privilege, right? The point people don't get is that when you go and vote, you are electing your representative to air your grievances to the Crown and Parliament. You are not voting for a government. That's not the way this system works. The party system has corrupted what democracy is there for. And it is to air your grievances.
Well, yeah, this is what we always said when I was running as one of the Thomas Paine independents. We're getting back to grassroots because, like you say, it starts with the people. The people then go to their elected councillors and say, right, this is what we want to see in our town, make it happen. They then go to the big government and say, right, the people have spoken, this is what they want. I want you to implement this for us. And that's how it should work. But people have now got this conception that it's big government. They then delegate down to the smaller governments and councils, and then they delegate to us. But really, it's the other way round, or it should be.
You're absolutely bang on the money. And again, that group of people, but from Norfolk, and was it the Thomas Paine group?
Thomas Paine Independence, yeah.
That again, That's exactly how it should work. So again, when you look at the system and the English system, the way it used to be, we are unique as a nation of England to be able to put that in there. And they, I don't know if I should say this on this show. Don't forget, this is where alternative media comes in, right? I'm going to say it, even though it's going to cause me a major headache, right? I I have got a reason, or I have got a theory on the reason why they will never talk about English independence. So they've given the vote to Scotland, they've given the vote to Wales, they've given the vote to Northern Ireland, but never England, right? Which I think is completely unfair anyway, right? Because they know what they know what the answer is going to be, right? And we would go back to being a great nation again. Within 18 months, we'd be rocking, right? One of the biggest issues, and you can tell me who you think is controlling the media and stopping any debate on this, even the alternative media. One of the biggest issues is when you void, not repeal, it's very important, the two different legal concepts. When you void the Acts of Union, you go back to the Union of Crowns, right? And that means a Commonwealth. So you're independent parliaments again. You go back to running your own countries. It's fantastic, right? You would get back your sovereignty completely, right? Here's the kick up. That if you void the Acts of Union, that means a certain nation in the Middle East, the Balfour Agreement and the Palestinian Mandate of 1923 and the Palestine Petition of 1948, just to make sure everyone's clear on this, it means all of them agreements are null and void, right? That means that all of a sudden, Israel's got a problem, right? Because technically in law, they don't exist anymore because the British have been voided, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, is there a reason, do you think, that all these alternative media and mainstream media and everyone will not talk about English independence? Is there a reason why they have never, ever allowed England to have that vote? And do you think there's someone... It's so stringent that you can't talk about English independence. It's almost as if
there's an agenda.
There's an agenda. There is something so bad with that it will cause some big problem somewhere else.
Well, we know the majority of the media, especially like the news media, is owned by a couple of families. So we know that they're all in cahoots. So we know that they only tell us what they want us to know.
Well, again,
but I don't know who those families are. But
well, so I always try and say to people, and I do mean this with I mean, some people are not religious, some people are religious, right? When I talk about Jews, don't forget Jesus Christ, right, was a rabbi, right? He was a Jew, but one of the things that people don't realise about Jesus Christ was he was also a nationalist.
He was also a king of the Jew, wasn't
he? He was fiercely, just to make sure people know this, a nationalist who was against the Roman Empire, right? So that's why they crucified him, because he was having a go at the other Jews that were collaborating, right, with the Roman Empire. And the British Empire is an extension of the Roman Empire. That's all it is. Even President Putin said that. He said, we're nothing to do with the Roman Empire and we will never be part of the Roman Empire, right? Ever, right? And then I often wondered why he said that. And then when you start to see all of these different things happening, you realise, and by the way, the Roman Empire and a certain other group of people believe that Britain and the British Isles is a province of the Roman Empire. They still believe that. There's certain groups of people still believe that. It is so obvious. And again, the Roman system, people don't realize this. The Roman system was the first type of communist system. You had two classes, right? And then you had an underclass. The underclass was called the slaves, right? It was a slave system. And there was people that operated within that slave system that used something called usury, right? Which is interest. And everyone who's gone against the usury system, just go and think about who these people are. Gaddafi, right? What happened to Libya, right? Iraq. What happened to Iraq? Anyone who pulls away from the central banking system, there's another guy, again, I'm not saying too much about this, and obviously, don't forget I'm an Englishman, so I'm not a fascist and I'm not a communist. But just think about this. There was another geezer, right, called Hitler. What did he do? He scrapped the central banking system. He scrapped it. What happened in Austria? People don't realise this. He locked up the Rothschild banker of Austria, right?
Yeah.
He then demanded the biggest release fee and ransom the world have ever seen. And guess what? They had to pay it. And when the Rothschild come out of his incarceration, they said, "Oh, how did they shoot?" And he said, "Those Nazis, they made me scrub the floors." Right? That was his biggest gripe, that they actually made him work. Right? And I was like, wow. But the bit I didn't know, and so, well, and I read the history of it, I find it more fascinating about the history that they never tell you, that they keep it all in the background. And basically, it was the biggest ransom ever paid. And to this day, it is the biggest ransom ever paid.
Do you know how much the figure was?
It was billions. I think it might have been 2 billion. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was a lot. So if you go back in that day to what a billion was now to what it is now, it was just mega money. And basically they said, we'll release him, but you have to give us this. So when you then realise that he created a monetary system that didn't operate on usury. So, and again, so I'm going to say this to the audience. So lots of people, because I do want people to understand, in religion, there's two religions that are closely associated with fiscal policy, if you want to call it that, right? And do you know who that is? Islam, right? And Christianity. Neither of them, in law, in Christian law and Sharia, allow usury. So if you've got the two biggest religions in the world, let's say, that believe in no usury, Orthodox Christians, Russia don't believe, like, in other words, the state charging interest to people and operating in that system, right? People don't realise that there's another two groups, right? Without making it obvious who they are, right? There's another two groups that would benefit from the two biggest religions fighting each other, right? Because that other group operate and make their money from a usury system. So I always used to say, what you're seeing is not a clash of religion, a clash of people and culture. It's a clash of banking systems. One says usury's fine because we're earning a pound note out of it. The other group say no usury. It's against God's will. It is an enslavement tool. It's debt enslavement, right? And that's why God forbid it. And once people understand that, so I'm not suggesting in any way.
So that's why we're the beast system. It's
Yeah.
nicknamed the beast system.
So people, so again, yeah. So don't forget, and there is something that people need to understand about. I'm not suggesting in any way that I approve of Sharia. In fact, the English Bill of Rights already forbids Sharia, right? It's just not being enforced. But constitutionally, it's forbidden in England, right? But so is the Talmud, and there's a Jewish religious law. But just to make sure, absolutely, that I make sure this is clear to everyone, I'm not prejudiced against any one of these groups of people. I am a constitutionalist, and what I'm saying is, your laws, religious laws, are forbidden in England. And it don't matter whether you're Hindu, Jewish, Islamic, right? Sikhs,
Sikhs, yeah.
it's all forbidden. But they're not enforcing that. The only people they are crushing are Christians. Whether you be Catholic, I mean, I'm not involved with a Pope. I don't want anything to do with a Pope.
Me personally, I'm spiritual. That's a bit of a cliche argument, isn't it? But I don't buy into religion. I believe in aspects of the Bible, but I believe the Bible is more a book about your body and how to look after your body, and everything in it is related as like not anagrams. What is it? Allegories or
right? So there's a number of things. So let me tell you something. So let me make sure I tell your audience this as well, right? When I talk to Christians, many Christians who absolutely believe in the Bible as the word of God, right? I get called a heretic. Right? So I am a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ was a warrior, right? He fought against an oppressive system, and he sought to seek to help people, right? But he was brave. He was a warrior, right? All I'm doing is saying to people, when I talk about Christianity, I don't like churches. Churches or organized religion, but just want to make sure people understand this. What the Bible actually says is the church is the group of people that come together in prayer, not the building. And you should not be worshipping any form of deity. So then people say to me, so what do you think of pagans? And I say, pagans actually worship the seasons. They worship what sustains them. They worship the sun that they can feel on their skin that gives them the vitamin D that keeps them alive, right?
why do people link paganism with Satanism?
I've got no idea. I think that is a ploy by organized religion. In my opinion, it is a ploy. Organized religion is a control mechanism. The original Stasi, and again, people don't realize this, is the Roman Catholic system. Because from the confession box, it went up the chain all the way to Rome, right? So they had information from the confession box on what people was doing in the community. So if you'd done something really bad and you was a Roman Catholic and you went in a confession box and the priest turned around and said, oh yeah, like 3 Hail Marys or whatever it is you do in the confession box, he then goes and tells his superior. His superior says this, they have a little meet up and they say, what position's he in? He's the mayor. Right. We've now got, and then all of a sudden there's a whisper to someone else. And someone walks into the mayor and says, listen.
So they're compromised.
They're compromised. Yeah. And that was the original Stasi system, and how it operated was in a Roman Catholic system. And it fed all the way up the chain, right away to the Pope.
I didn't know that. That's quite interesting. So all those secrets that the people thought that they were just saying between God and the bloke, it was going right up to headquarters. Oh dear.
So, and again, what people don't realise, and again, I'm not having a problem. I was married to a Catholic for 33 years, right? And it was never ever an issue. My nan was a Catholic.
I heard that the Rothschilds invented the Catholic Church.
No, the Catholic Church goes back right the way back to the Romans. That's why it's called the Roman Catholics. That's why they're called Roman Catholics. So when people actually understand. There's more detail I can get in, but it brings in a religious element where people start screaming heretic, heretic, and you just turn around and say, listen, all I'm saying to you is if 20 people come to me in a field and we as Christians decide to pray, right, that is a church.
It's a church of people, like you have a school of fish or you have a...
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting.
And that's all people need to understand about Christianity. And again, pagans, they worship the seasons, right? They worship what sustains them. And when people say to me, what do you think about pagans versus Christians? And then I always say to them, well, at least they worship what they can see, feel, and eat, right? What your worship, you can't touch it. You don't even know if it exists. At least they know the sun exists and they can watch the plants grow in their seasons. So they're worshipping something.
They're kind of worshipping Gaia and the universe, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, I say
So,
universe.
and again, I believe, so there's things that I believe. I believe we're all connected. I believe in the universe we're connected together. I believe that our souls, you can find a life partner on this planet and you will be still connected in the main universe. And I believe there's another group of people that cause problems in this country, or all over the world, and they are called dark personality. That includes not so dark personality, otherwise known as PPP, includes psychopaths, narcissists, Machiavellians, and really sadists as well. It's the same thing. There's 20 traits, and they all have the same, exactly same traits, whether they're narcissists or psychopaths. And people don't realise that they are 10% of the population, and they are pure evil, right? But you would just go and talk to them, and so 90% of the
And
population
most
isn't
of
that.
them come from Eton.
Well, again, I've talked.
They're chosen.
I've talked about Eton before. I believe Eton should be shut down. I believe Oxford and Cambridge should be shut down. We should go back to our universities should really only contain four main degrees: law, mathematics. What was the other two? Engineering, right? And technically, you need
English.
English. That's it. You don't need anything else because they're the engineering.
History's well, you just can't trust history, can you? Really?
Not anymore. And the only reason you can't trust it anymore is because the British system has rewritten. I mean, how many people out there know? If I said to your audience, who stopped slavery? What would you say to that?
Didn't we just? I would say that we stopped paying the British people, the English people, only recently just finished paying off the slave barons.
Now you've that's the subject, right? So let me tell everyone that's listening to this: the people who stopped slavery were the English, not the British. The British wanted to carry on, and it come from a particular. The most famous case was Stuart versus Somerset, 1772. We stopped it, and it was a shot heard around the world. And the slaves tried to get to England because they knew that they would be free, and they did come here, right? Not in mass numbers, but enough to cause a problem. But we looked after them, and it was the working class really that looked after them, and the middle classes, right? And by the way, it was judges, barristers, and legal professionals in the main that had slaves in this country. Nothing to do with the working class, right? So to make sure people understand what happened, Wilberforce was a good guy, but 20 consecutive years, so every year for 20 years, he tried to put in the Abolition Act, right? And the British Parliament kept saying no. Even though it was unlawful in common law, they kept saying no. And then they done a deal to pay the slavers, right? And the people who paid back the Rothschild loan, right? But back then, in 1830, the people who paid that loan back via taxes was the English working class. And we are vilified by the black people and brown people, right, that were slaves, and they say they want reparations from whites, right? But they never talk about the 300 plus years of Barbary pirates taking us as slaves, right? That's where the song comes from. Never, never, never will be slaves. Right?
The Irish slavery system was far more barbaric and than what the black slavery was. And I found out not that long ago that during the height of slavery, they still actually only worked for half the year. So we by default now work more than that.
So people don't realise slaves were treated better, largely, than what white working class children We lost lots of white working class children who were killed by their masters in this country, in England, because they had no value. Whereas a slave, you actually purchased them and they had a value and you could sell that slave on, right? So listen, I don't agree with this. I'm just telling you they had a value. So they was often treated and fed and kept well, right? Because
They
there
were
was
an asset.
they was an asset. Right? That's how they saw them, as an asset, right? Whereas white working class were never assets. We was always the pain in the arse, right? And just to make sure, I mean, I could tell you stories from history. It's in Hansard, right? From history, where they stuck a 4-year-old little boy up a red hot chimney, and he died in the chimney. They had to dig him out of the chimney, and they could hear him whimpering as he was dying of the heat. That's a white working class kid they stuck up the fucking chimney, right? And what I'm saying to people is, slavery is a terrible thing, but it is part of the Roman system that they are trying to implement in England today. They want you to be slaves, whether it's via debt, whether it's from digital identification, whatever it is. The slave system is trying to enslave you today, and there's a group of people. They cover all religions, right? People must understand this. Don't think it's just about the Jews or it's just about Islam. It is not. There's a group of people at the top of this chain. People talk about Satan. And I always say Satan is not one person. It's a group of people. And they don't care about religion. They are narcissistic psychopaths. Dark personality is what's controlling us, the 10% of the population, and they elevate to positions of control. And once you understand that, and we can test for that now.
Is this above Freemasonry?
Oh, well above. It's a personality. They've got something wrong with the front lobal part of their brain, right? And they look normal.
They lack the empathy.
They lack empathy, and they target people with empathy, right? So and they lie like for no reason. Just think of politicians and blatantly standing there lying. They are narcissistic, and everyone keeps electing them. But if you was to test, and it's a simple test, there's a scan that you can do on the brain, and it tells you if that part of the brain isn't working. I'm not suggesting you do anything nasty to them. You just don't let them have positions of power anywhere. And the 90% of the population would take back control of the country. It's so simple to solve, but people won't talk about it. That's what I'm saying. Alternative media is to talk. These are not ideas. These are facts that I'm talking about, right? So the Constitution is factual. England has been there for 1,100 years. The British Union has only been there just over 300 years. What did the British Union do within 70 years of the incorporation or enactment, right, of the Acts of Union, which was a treaty? Within 70 years, they'd attacked the English colonies in America, right? Because they said, we've come here to build this country. We don't need you telling us what to do and putting taxes on us. Go away, right? Leave us alone. And therefore, you had the War of Independence. There's other things that happened. We know exactly when these positions happened. We've reverse engineered all of what's gone on. The cleanest way of resolving this problem and us going back to happiness, wealth, and people living together in harmony is to void the Acts of Union and go back to the Commonwealth. And once people understand, there's a reset position. We're unique in the world to have this available to us. And remember the group of people that do not want that to happen.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this podcast. I've learned quite a lot. I'm going to have to listen to it all again when I edit it, and I'm looking forward to it because, there's so much to take in. So listen, people, yes, please, I was going to get you to do that actually for the thumbnail, so I'm glad you've done that. So yes, if this makes sense to me, so if it makes sense to you listening and you live in Runcorn or Helsby, get down and vote this man in. This is the kind of person not person, state word. This is the kind of gentleman you want in. So get down and vote.
Yeah, and again, don't forget, I'm in that Parliament to represent and air your grievances to the Crown and to Parliament, and no one will shut me up. If you want to see the maiden speech that you've never seen before, I am going to tell them people exactly what I think of them and the fact that they have all perjured their oath. And we will now talk of England in this Parliament. That's it. And then all of a sudden people will go, wow. And then I'm going to say to people, remember, the English Constitution Party has no whips, right? As long as you understand our Constitution, and we will train you in the basics of it, anyone can stand for our party. It is a brand of independence. That's what we stand for. And once people understand that, they go, wow, now we want a bit of this, right? That's all it is.
Brilliant. There you go. Move over, Nigel. You've had your day. Fuck off.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Enjoy. Look, I wish you all the best of luck with it. I really do, because I'd love to see you progress into that, because I think it's well needed. Look after yourselves, everyone. Take care, and until next time, goodbye for now.